I've been scrolling through to see if we have all our committee members. Supervisor Luck, are you here yet? Okay. Besides Supervisor Luck, we have everyone else, so we have a quorum, so we can go ahead and move forward here. So, agenda item number 2, proof of notification. Mr. Langrick, was the meeting properly notified, and if so, how?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we did get it sent out. It was sent to WRCO department heads. A copy was posted to the bulletin board downstairs, Richland Observer, and the Valley Sentinel, as well as emailed to committee members. Mr. Chair.
Okay, great. Thank you. Agenda item number 3 is agenda approval. So today we have a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Linda, I'll second.
Okay, so we got a motion by Supervisor Brewer and a second by Supervisor Gentis. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Agenda item number 4, previous meeting minutes. So these are the minutes the very basic ones that I took, just recording motions and seconds and roll call votes. So just looking for a motion on this for approval.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, a motion by Supervisor Cooey.
This is Dave. I'll second.
A second by Supervisor Turk. Any how would you say, amendments or any changes, any mistakes anyone sees to be corrected? Okay, then all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. The only thing I'm gonna take out of order today is agenda item number 20. I'm just gonna put that after agenda item number 5 so that Treasurer Keller can go all at once. So agenda item number 5, the Treasurer's annual report. So is Treasurer Keller on the line with us today?
Hello.
We can hear you now. Go ahead. We'll start
Okay.
with agenda item number 5, your annual report, then we'll jump into the revenue reports.
All right. Okay. This is the annual report from the Treasurer's Office. The first part of it shows the monthly receipts and disbursements, and then the grand total for the year is shown there. The cash balance January 1 is what we ended up with at the end of last year, with the receipts added to it, and then below that is the disbursements, and the available cash balance is what we ended up with at the end of this December. Then on the next page, we have the county bank balance, and we have several adjustments from Point and Pay, which is our credit card service. If people paid us in error, they have to do a refund, and it takes 5 to 10 business days for that to happen. So these were kind of left to be done yet, and they were done then in January. We also had a December wage attachment that was not deducted from the bank until the 4th of January, but it was in our December disbursements. So then that leaves the bank balance, as you can see, $1,463,027.25. The next part is the general investments. That is all in the local government investment pool. That was the balance at the end of the year. The interest earned on investments with
Someone is eating and we can hear every bite. If you don't mind muting yourself, please.
I just muted them.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Treasurer Keller. Sorry about that. Keller, you'll just need to unmute yourself now because Ms. Scott unmuted. I'm sorry, she muted everybody, so now you have to unmute.
Okay. All right, I'm back on. So the interest earned on investments, we've been monitoring that each month, and that is only at the $50,106.11, which is much lower than previous years. And then the interest earned on delinquent taxes, that's the total for the year, which is a little bit higher than last year. And interest earned on checking account with a total interest shown of $170,580.73. And then we have the checking account balance at the end of December plus the total investments, which leaves us with the bottom figure of $11,763,941.31 to end the year.
Okay, so does anyone have any questions for the treasurer on her report? Okay, if not, if you could just go right into agenda item number 20, which is your, what do we call those again? Revenue reports.
Okay. All right, that is showing the cash balance as of the end of January. And again, that includes the money we received from the other municipalities for the January settlement. So that was a nice increase. And then we have, I do not have the interest figures yet for January for the investment pool. That doesn't come till around the 6th or 8th of the month. So I believe you saw this at the end of December, that amount previously. And then our sales tax for January was $114,113.35. So we're staying right in there with sales tax again.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for all your work on this, keeping track of our money. Any questions or comments on this from committee members?
I have a question, comment, please.
Yeah.
Would it be wrong to be somewhat optimistic about our fund balance, cash balance?
No, I think taxes are coming in very well. We'll have our February settlement coming up next week. We'll be taking in more money. So probably the biggest share of our levy will be taken in, by the end of February. So after that, then it's up to us to collect. But payments have been coming in very well, and municipalities are commenting too how much they've collected, and so it's actually kind of surprising.
Great, thank you. It's a credit to the residents of Richland County, the taxpayers, I think.
That's right.
Okay, any other comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Supervisor Seat, go ahead.
thank you, Mr. Chairman, for Madam Treasurer. Under the investment category, I think you show 10 million there. Is that all in general savings?
I'm sorry, is that all what?
The investments, are they all invested in general savings account?
Right, they're all in our general investment account at the pool. That's correct.
Yeah, a regular savings account.
Right, we get interest on that right at the pool. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep, you're welcome.
Okay. As long as no one else jumps in here, thank you, Treasurer Keller. Appreciate your time,
you're
and we'll move on to agenda item number 6, which is the Register of System Maintenance Bills. So, Ms. Triggs, I think we'll pass it off to you. I think you're on the line. Just have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, all right. We never used to have to do this, and last year they told us that any bills over $1,000 we had to bring to finance and personnel. So I hope I'm doing this right. But anyway, these are just my maintenance fees for my imaging system and my indexing system. Image Tech is my imaging system, and LandNav or GCS is my indexing system. And for GCS, $4,290 comes out of the Register of Deeds funds, and $1,750 comes out of Land Records funds. And for my imaging system, $2,010.50 comes out of the Register of Deeds funds, and $603.15 comes out of the Land Records funds. That's all been budgeted for and approved, so I guess I just need your approval.
Okay, great. And just to answer your question, yeah, you're doing this right. We did just change the rules. It used to be $1,000 is the limit. Now the limit is $2,000. So say the Image Tech bill had been less than 2,000, you would not have needed to bring it. But since it was over $2,000,
Okay.
you do need to bring it. So that's just a
Okay.
recent change as of last month as well.
Okay.
Okay, so looking for.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve these payments.
Okay. Motion by Supervisor Brewer. I think it was a second by Supervisor Cooey. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. All those in favor of paying these bills, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 7, radio tower analysis contract. Who am I off to? Mr. Langrek or Chief Deputy Porter?
I can tee it up for additional comments, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
So looking today for motion to recommend resolution to the Richland County Board to accept a proposal for consulting services from True North Consulting Group regarding the county radio and tower analysis and improvement in the amount of $24,500 from short-term capital fund number 92, line 8. Background on this item: Richland County emergency radio and tower infrastructure is aging with multiple components past recommended lifespan. The radio tower system also has significant dead spots due to topography and limitation of current equipment. The limitations impact our communication with patrol, emergency response, firefighting partners, and overall jeopardizes public safety and communications when communications fail. We did designate $45,000 in short-term financing, again, Fund 92 for this project. The proposal bid of $24,500 would get us through phase 1, which is an evaluation estimate. Phase 1 is completion is the analysis and identifying of our problems and our options to remedy. If we were to pursue forward with True North, they estimate that a phase 2 will give us, which would give us our specification design, could be another $14,000 to $26,000. 3 vendors were solicited for bids. They interviewed before LEJC committee on January 8th. That was Evans, Tusa, and True North, with True North selected by unanimous decision by that committee. The bid was put in your folder and then is out on the internet. And then kind of the breakdown, which is probably most helpful, is when you look in the back of the proposal when they're starting to show the phases. This would be the first phase. It is kind of coming to Richland County, assessing our current system, meeting with our shareholders and our partners and ourselves to determine kind of what our needs and our gaps are. And then if we were to continue with a phase 2 development, that is where we would be then, phase 1, we would have agreed on what the problem is. Phase 2, then it would be putting together the specification design to have vendors then bid on fixing our problems. And then phase 3 would be the procurement process, where the money then would we be looking to actually get a contractor to come in then and solve the problem. So this is kind of the actions that were taken and the steps that were taken in arriving at this decision. I would turn it over to Director Scott, to Chief Porter, or to members of the LAJC that might be on here to further talk on the process of selecting True North. Mr. Chair.
Okay, so I guess first here we're looking for a motion to accept this proposal. So maybe we'll get it on the floor here and then we can see if there's any questions.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval.
Okay, a motion by Supervisor Seep.
This is Melissa. I'll second that motion. Sorry, I'm late.
That's okay. Glad you're here. Second by Supervisor Luck. Okay, so questions or comments from the committee?
Well, Mr. Chairman, question.
Yeah, Supervisor Brewer, go ahead.
If we approve True North for phase 1 here, does that mean they're the vendor for all phases, or will we bid this each time we approach a phase?
I think ideally we'd like to see True North see this project.
If I may, Marty, when we looked at that, if we switch partway through, it will cause higher costs because they would have to go back to reevaluate some of the work of the other ones because every vendor is going to insist on doing their own homework. So really it is, once we choose one moving forward, it's pretty much with that vendor.
I agree with what you're saying, Barb, and I just wonder how we get around the bidding process each time then we're approaching this. Is there some streamlined way we can do this? Question.
With our so there's kind of two bits part of it. When we're putting in a contract for a service, which this is, then we're not obligated to go out and do a request for proposals and get bids. It was just that the nature of this project, being expansive and extensive it is, we took it upon ourselves to reference out to get RFPs for this process. But by Rule 14, we can pick who we want to contract for a service. This True North then, as our consultant, when we're actually doing the public improvement project of it, and those statutes then come into play, they will be doing, essentially then, if we get to that point, they will be doing that request for proposal for us to do the actual public improvement. Does that answer your question? And did I state that correctly, Director Scott, to the best of your knowledge?
That's correct, to the best of my knowledge. And we also have the resolution that was passed 2 years ago about similar systems and continuity of those. I could go out and find it and come back to you in just a moment with that. That would certainly apply to this situation, that because we have already started with this system, we would need to stay within that.
Yeah. Thank you, Barb. I think that makes sense.
Anyone else? All right, then all those in favor of the motion to accept the proposal, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Agenda item number 8, change order with Macro for the large courtroom project. Mr. Langreich.
Mr. Chair, looking today for a motion to accept a change order authorized by Administrator Langrick, executed under contingency authority granted by resolution number 2163, and to appropriate $596.92 from fund number 92 to cover added expenses. So during the carpentry and the conduit phase of the large courtroom improvement project, configuration required the purchase of 2 additional floor boxes to allow safe access for wiring to desks, tables. These 2 boxes were authorized by myself, shipped express, and installed. The added expenses to the project resulted in the $596.92. I'm authorized a contingency of $500 by resolution. However, this funding is coming from the short-term capital borrowing fund number 92. An appropriation is requested from this committee to cover those expenses from that fund, Mr. Chair.
Looking for a motion to let the administrator do this. What he already did. We're looking for an appropriation.
I'll make it. I'll make the motion.
That's Melissa, I'll second.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Cooey and a second by Supervisor Luck. Any questions or discussion? And all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. Agenda item number 9, MIS, licensing contract for encrypted email. Mr. Langer.
Mr. Chair, looking today for approval of a purchase of Barracuda Essentials Security Edition for 290 users from JComp Technologies for the cost of $7,864.80. The background on this item, I will defer to Director Scott to explain. Director Scott, do we have you on yet?
Sorry, my iPad froze. I don't know what happened there. So with this, currently with the change with COVID that has been made, there is an increasing need for encrypted email throughout the county. With people not meeting in person, things not being handed out, we have to send more and more things encrypted. We also discovered as we started working on this project that there was several HIPAA violations that were happening because we were not using encrypted email. The result of a HIPAA violation is a $25,000 fine per incident. It's a real painful thing. And so with that, we need to remedy the problem. So my suggestion was we need to find a way to encrypt emails. We have been, for a very limited number of users, been doing it at $100 a year for each license for each user. HHS has purchased those and Pine Valley has one of those. That makes it really limited. If I need to send something that is sensitive in nature, or Children's Services needs to send something, that is sensitive in nature, they have to give it to a secretary that has the encrypted email on their computer to send. That doesn't work. It really doesn't. So we needed to find a solution that could be for everyone. We went to Barracuda and took a look at what this would cost. This is a cloud-based solution. So we're looking at a total cost of $7,864.80. That will cover the entire county. Every single person, including you board members, who have email would be able to send encrypted email. And it's really an all or nothing. You either do it or you don't. You can't pick 30 members because it's applied to our email server. So the other thing that this implies is that we're going to continue to do this. I don't see this changing. I don't see the climate changing that we're going to need this any less. It's $27.12 per year per user. So when you add up the 290 users that we have on our email server, that's where we come up with that number. I strongly recommend that we move this forward, that way everyone has encryption available to them.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion here to approve this expense.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval and I ask for discussion after second.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Seep.
I'll second.
I'll second it.
Okay, we got a second by Supervisor Brewer. Supervisor Seep, go ahead.
Yes, you mentioned HIPAA violations and that this will solve that problem. Is that correct? Did I understand you correctly?
I should preface that with, you have the human error factor. It will make huge leaps in solving the county's HIPAA problems. Now, a user can still circumvent that, but if the county has put those safeguards into place, I think that it speaks to our liability has been met. And if a user violates HIPAA, then that's more on the user.
So may I ask, does this cover every email on every computer in every department in the county?
Yes. But it will only encrypt on demand. So all your email isn't going to be encrypted. Only the ones that you tell it to encrypt will be.
Will it be a policy that all emails henceforth will be encrypted?
I probably wouldn't do that because it adds a step. When you get an encrypted email, you have to click a link and go out to ensure that the reader is on the secured site. It's going to make email harder to use if you do that. So I would suggest only sending emails that you need encrypted as encrypted. And if we as a county start sending everything encrypted, open records might come into question. I don't know about that, but if everything we send is encrypted, that's going to look really suspect.
So may I ask, Mr. Chairman, one more question? I presume then that there will be a protocol that will provide guidelines to each department head with regard to how to decide what shall be encrypted and what shall not be encrypted?
I know that was addressed to Sean. Sean, do you mind if I address that?
Oh, no, yeah, no, he still got the floor. You go ahead.
Okay, I would anticipate that we'll put policies out through Administrator Langrecht's office that would give that guidance.
Well, I think that's important.
Okay, so
And
Supervisor Seep said he thinks that's important. Anything else to add, Supervisor Seep?
No, thank you. I'd like to hear a follow-up on it at another time.
One more note is that there are some county employees, the DA's office, anybody who's within the courts that do not have co.richland.wi.us addresses. Those will not be affected by this. They do not belong on our email server. They're controlled by the state and they do their own thing. I can't control their email policies.
Are there any other departments other than the DA's office?
The clerk of court's office and the DA's office, the Kathy Cooper and the people out at DHIC. And I think those are the only, and the extension office. Some of them, not all of them. Some of them have co.richland addresses.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Scott.
Thank you.
Okay, so Ms. Scott, if someone made an open records request about, say, an issue happening in a particular department and some of those emails sent out had been encrypted, would the open records request, I mean, could you end up reading those emails because that, say the people in that department had decided to encrypt those emails? Would those no longer be readable by the person who does the open records request?
I would have to research that to come back to you with a completely honest answer.
Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Seat, go ahead.
Yes, I'm not an attorney here, but it's my understanding that that if a public records request is made, the encrypted email is just downloaded to readable print for the requester.
With some parameters though, because we have to protect the confidentiality of, like, if it's juveniles, we have to protect their privacy, or clinical services, mental health has a whole nother realm.
Yeah, I understand that. There are very strict protocols for releasing some of those privacy items, right?
It sounds like yes, there are. Okay, any other committee members with questions or comments on this one?
I have one comment.
Yep, go ahead, Supervisor Luck.
So there's a statement here that currently there's room in the MIS budget for this item. If we approve this one and it's going to be something that's annually, do we need to have the discussion about where this would get paid for in the long term now, or is that something we just want to tackle when it comes up next time?
Well, we might want to, under agenda item number 2, that's a 2-part agenda item, 10B. I think this topic is going to come up again. I'm not sure if we're going to have answers, but maybe we could handle it under there. Just kind of keep that question in mind as we move forward here, because I think staff has been kind of thinking about that very question that you brought up. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries. Agenda item number 10, capital improvements and projects planning. And then we've got, there are 2 parts to this agenda item. I think we'll just let administrator both of them. A is format and request guidance language, and B is county IT plan format and funding considerations. So Mr. Langrick, floor is yours.
Mr. Chair, I'm looking today for 2 potential motions. One, to accept the capital improvement and capital project plan format and guidance language, either as presented or with amendments that we have reached today. Second part of it will be to accept the county IT plan and funding consideration format as presented or with amendments today. The second one might be more discussion format as we try to gather information pieces, well, with both of these, but the second one, especially looking for the different consideration pieces of information that you feel that you would need in helping support decisions. So the background on this is meeting the goals of the 2022 budget process plan. Efforts are underway to bring forward requests for capital improvements and capital projects, as well as planning for future IT needs and findings. It should be fundings, my apologies. Please see the attached documents, which we'll take a look at. So you may recognize this format is what we used last year, specifically in trying to help identify our uses for our short-term borrowing. But trying to expand this now into capturing for all of our capital improvements and capital projects planning. Looking today to kind of show to you what the anticipated format would look like. Looking to have our different departments put their projects on there with the estimated cost and where the revenue source or the funding source is going to come from for paying for those expenses. The idea with this is that we can capture, this is capturing our current year, that we can capture our projected next 2022 year, and then be able to also be able to look down the road at other projects that were templated, that we're projecting with their expenses, and then to have a running wish list at the bottom of items that we're keeping track of, but we have not allocated funds or planned on what year they're going to fit and where they're going to fit. So it becomes a running roadmap for us on these projects. For you folks, the big piece will be sorting out then what 2022 looks like, and that is going to be kind of templated then for March. So I plan on, with your approval, soliciting this out to departments, getting feedback on what the 2022 should look like, and then seeing where we can fit the other pieces in here and bring it to yourselves for debate and final adoption on that plan, knowing that plans certainly can change as our needs arise, but to have a blueprint so we can understand what types of borrowing or funding sources that we need to be looking for to try to meet our infrastructure needs. With that then would go a letter out to department heads that would iterate or that would state that the goals are to maintain our infrastructure, that we're continuing annual short loan financing for these projects unless guidance is given otherwise. The document then is planned as keeping and recording a plan for proposed authorizations, and of course monitoring our investments into county infrastructure so we can kind of at a glance see where we are, what we're investing in for improvement. Timeline is kind of talked about. We'd be looking at getting the approval request and the guidance blessed off with by yourselves today, getting that solicited to departments, ask them to return back their requests, preliminary type requests by next week. We'll We'll have open discussion at the department head meeting, kind of on what that plan looks like. And then we'll begin kind of refining it with estimates potentially from contractors and vendors to try to boil those numbers down a little bit closer to what they might be the best we can. And then on March 9th, bringing this back to you folks for discussion in front of the committee with departments as needed, or potentially having a special meeting in March kind of focused on this project. And that is kind of the first part about it. The other part of it, as you may have noticed, is I'm anticipating that with a little bit of property improvements that we'll have, our short-term loan borrowing next year could amount to a $1,050,000 of usable funds, but currently we kind of have placed against it about $1,422,000 funds or projects. So we're already kind of in a situation where we're going to have to look to readjust for 2022 from a short-term borrowing perspective, unless we have some other types of funding sources that we can come across. So the same type of a mindset, and as we just discussed about with the last agenda item, MIS runs a comparable type of a program here, and what you're looking at is the kind of the cover letter that captures all the data points that Barb tracks for countywide projects. But underneath the spreadsheet that she runs, she's keeping track of annual type costs, and I don't know if we've got the dates on here updated, but that would be the same type of a plan, is to try to capture across the board what our department types of costs are, and then continuing conversations on what should be allocated towards department expenses versus what should be kind of underneath an umbrella of MIS expenses. The balance there of department control and then having it for accounting purposes to go against different revenue sources kind of stands on one side, and then having the accounting factor of being able to see true cost of services across the county, and to have purchasing by mass kind of is on the other side of the pendulum that we'll be trying to sort out. Director Scott, is there anything else that you needed to talk about in regards to that?
No, but when we talked about the 7,000 being a cost next year, it fits right into this. And obviously you aren't seeing that cost on the spreadsheet because it didn't exist until it passes county board. But it'll be another 7,000 on top of that.
Okay, so I'm going to just jump in here and get the discussion started, if unless either of you had anything to add. You know, this just got sent to us this morning, this information, and so I looked through it, and I'm very grateful that there is a request going out to department heads. You know, this is more formal than we've ever had before. We've got 5 different years for capital improvement planning laid out in a chart, and that needs to be, you know, fleshed out. Those requests have to come in, and then you know, this committee and the county board ultimately have to make some decisions and prioritize. And my opinion is that it would be good to have some sort of a meeting in March where we can get a lot of input and feedback from the county board as a whole. Because in my mind, there's 2 questions here. One question is, how much are we comfortable borrowing for in 2022? And then the second one would be, how would we prioritize all the projects coming forward, assuming that we would not borrow for all of the requests. So those seem to be the 2 main tasks that are coming up. And that's with the first part of this agenda item. With the second part of the agenda item, I personally am looking for some recommendation. My opinion is I'd like to see from MIS and from staff, how should this be split out? Should these charges go to the individual departments, or should there be, you know, should this just go to the MIS budget, and what effect does this have on capital borrowing? So I guess I'm just, you know, it looks like you guys have gathered a lot of data, Ms. Scott, and you got a lot compiled. You're keeping track of all these different things going on at the county. It's a big operation, but it would be helpful, I think, for me to know personally. My opinion is, what would you like to see? What would be the easy? And I don't mean just the chart. The chart to me is a lot of information for me to digest. I don't understand what it all means. And if you need to provide two options for us, I think those options just need to be laid out that the finance committee can make a decision if you need guidance. But I think we just need things further fleshed out would be where I'm at.
And I've got a more in-depth spreadsheet that I can also send to you. This one's been sent a couple of different times. My concern is, this is a complex question, because there are some funding sources that we get from the state. Child support's an excellent example, where they reimburse. And if we do it all as essential costs, can we claim those reimbursements? I don't have those answers. That's really beyond an IT source. I can tell you what the needs are, but the funding is a little beyond the IT department.
Yeah, my suggestion would just be to work with Mr. Langreck to figure some of that out, because I don't have the expertise there either. I don't know if any of the other committee members feel like they do, but I certainly don't myself. So, other committee members, comments or questions on this?
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Supervisor Brewer, go ahead.
This is a proactive approach, finally, to capital budgeting, capital improvement budgeting, and then bringing in the IS factor. You're looking at the first formation of a true plan of administration for the county, and I'm gratified to see it. And going forward, it's going to make the job of allocating precious resources maybe not easier, but at least more equitable.
Yeah, Supervisor C.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm sure I join with others. I really appreciate the intelligence and the hard work that went into designing this spreadsheet approach as a presentation. Very good. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Supervisor Turk.
I just want to echo what Supervisor Brewer said. We're kind of in uncharted territory here. This whole process smacks of long-term vision and efficiency and planning. It's great to see. And I know that we don't have all the answers yet, but we're taking steps to getting those answers, and that feels really good, and I'm very proud that we're getting to this point. So thanks to Administrator Langrick and everybody who's put their time and effort into this to bring it this far forward so we can start working and getting it the rest of the way.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Chair, if I could just make a couple comments, just kind of
go for it.
So the things, obviously, by laying these projects out that you're probably going to be able to see, and other questions are going to come up of it, is this doesn't quite capture a bit of on our bonding projects, and I think with this, and when we get to March, what I hope to be able to present to you too is kind of an iteration on what we learned about our bonding projects, is presented in a report that Carol just provided to us when they did our assessment for our short term, and essentially kind of looking how that fits into the scheme of the things. When you look at like our current expenses this year of what we're investing in the courthouse, it obviously kind of raises questions on the long-term plans for the courthouse. Where does that fit on the on a yearly plan or a decade plan to have better understanding in the future on continued investments into our properties? And that's an example, not that we're switching out of the courthouse in the near future, but to just kind of bring that to light. The other part of it that obviously I think you're going to be able to pick up on real quick is that in our short-term obligations, as we had talked about last year, there's elements of it that traditionally had kind of been taken out of operating levy that we're kind of covering down on. It's kind of templated that on a given year we're doing sheriff squad cars potentially and continued highway trunk improvement potentially. With those two pieces on the table, if those kind of ring true as an annual kind of a solution for those two problems is short-term borrowing, then that, that reduces how much pie we have left for other types of projects. And again, not saying that that's inappropriate. That's kind of how we advanced it the first time is filling in on the car outlays and the highway improvement outlays to try to capture again GTA reimbursements and to keep our trunk up. So we've had these discussion points again, but again, just to iterate, there's not a whole lot of pie left in our short-term borrowing solutions for us to solve a lot of problems. And then of course at the bottom are undesignated and future projects. Kind of one that's current conversation on and on at the southern end of the county is, what are we going to do with the Tri-County Airport? Jewel is working on a project, I think to the tune of about a $1.4 million project, which is a drainage ditch. There's been conversations with different federal agencies and looking to see what types of funding potentially could help with that project. But right now the estimated project is about a $1.4 million investment. There's multiple projects as well at the UW campus that they have in a 5-year type of a planning that really aren't on the docket to address, that also probably needs attention in some way, shape, or form. So I think it was well said that this will hopefully help us understand the problem and to be able to visualize it. But certainly the hardest bits of this are going to come in trying to appropriate the funds and solve the problems on how to keep our infrastructure up. Mr. Chair.
So we're looking for a motion. I think the motion would be to accept the capital improvement and capital project plan format and guidance language. That's the first part of it. And then the second part would be to accept the county IT plan and funding consideration format, knowing there probably are some more details to fill in on both of these.
I'll make that motion. Do you want two motions, or I'll make a motion?
I think I've got it written up as one total motion. If we see people disagreeing with one part or the other, we could split them out if we need to.
I don't think that's necessary. I'll make the motion for both.
Okay.
I will second the motion, Mr. Chairman, and ask for discussion.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Brewer and a second by Supervisor Seep. So go ahead, Supervisor Seep.
With regard to the Tri-County Airport, will that involve just the two counties that are remaining involved? That 1.4 million?
It's right now, it's a proposed solution to the problem of continued flooding. There's been no action to obligate us to $1.4 million at this point. I believe Cardinal Glass came forward with money to have Jewel and Associates do a plan design of how to remedy the problem. They have a large drainage kind of canal vision that I believe is what the $1.4 million project is. There's been no action to accept it or anything of that nature yet, as they're still finalizing it.
Excellent. And then I had one other question, Mr. Chairman. I noticed you used the word accept rather than approve. Was that intentional or incidental?
I just was repeating the language that Mr. Langrek put in the cover sheet for us.
Mr. Langrek, do you see a distinction between the terms approve and accept?
I'm looking at this as a format that you're going to be potentially amending in the future. So whatever you're comfortable with, I see it as a pliable motion yet. We're going to cross a bridge with it and get information back to you. So,
Mr. Chairman, I'm comfortable with accept.
Okay. Yeah, and I just want to make sure it's crystal clear for everybody right now. This is just talking about a process. This is not approving any particular projects or funding amounts at this time. Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Is anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries. So thank you for that one. Agenda item number 11, capital improvement requests for the highway salt shed. Mr. Langrek. still on mute, unfortunately, so you got to start all over.
Thank you. I left off mumbling on the Highway Commission has made a recommendation to seek funds from the general fund for construction of a sand shed. Background on this is the Highway Commission has environmental concerns for contamination or contaminant of sand and salt mix. High winds will cause the sand to blow off the pile, producing concerns of silica dust. And then we also have rain, snow, diluting silt, causing ground contamination. The department has made every effort to cover the pile with tarps and to withstand the elements. Constructing a building will address these concerns. Approximate dollar value on that is $250,000. And this is something that we had talked about, I believe, briefly last year. And I think we had given props to the Highway Committee and to the Commissioner of trying to ask for things in advance. I'm gathering that the need on this is becoming urgent enough we're acting on it this year is a recommendation that's brought forward. So it's brought as a separate item outside of as we just talked about, having it consolidated with a capital improvement, capital borrowing, or the capital improvement, capital projects. Mr. Chair.
Okay, so I did reach out to Supervisor Williamson, who's the chair of the Highway Committee, this morning about this. I asked about some of the background for this, and he knew that he mentioned that the Highway Committee wanted to get this in front of the Finance Committee so that we were aware of it. I asked him about the use of the general fund versus borrowing for it in a future year, and he, you know, we are just to the point now where we're starting to get used to the idea of capital improvement planning, and I think this example illustrates why we probably need to involve the wider board in these large ticket item requests as they come forward. I did not get the sense that there was an emergency out there, that there is increased liability or risk of a fine or of contamination, like Mr. Langreck mentioned. So that's some of my my research on it. I would not support it coming out of the general fund at this point. I think this is appropriate for the capital borrowing program coming up. And looking for thoughts from other committee members as well here.
Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Luck, yep.
Steve Williamson is actually on the call. I didn't know if he would like to elaborate at all on the situation.
That's great. Yeah, Supervisor Williamson, I don't know if I got that right, so feel free to jump in and give us more information here.
All right, I'm working on it. So
There we go.
I talked with Roger a little bit, and I had a little bit of time to talk to Mr. Cooey. You know, we have concerns with the $150,000 that we basically gave up from our budget to you know, aid in trying to balance our overall county budget. So I don't know. I know Roger's on there as well. I'll let him speak. We would like to keep moving forward, but I think we probably, if there's a way we could guarantee it into the 2021 funding of capital improvement projects, then we would probably be okay to give us a little bit more time to do the final research that we need and or permitting and stuff like that. But Roger, do you want to speak a little?
Yeah, I guess. I just, you know, just because we're a government doesn't mean the EPA or the DNR turns a blind eye to us. I just want to make sure that we're in compliance and we don't cause any issues with the property adjacent or the groundwater to the department.
Sean, we had discussed this, you know, with the previous commissioner as well. You know, so as long as I've been on there, and I think Marty can attest to that as well, that we have been throwing it around and just trying to figure out what is the best way and possibly. So we haven't, we're not throwing it out there and we've done some research and been looking at other facilities that other counties are using. So we've been working at it. We think we found something that will be probably the most cost effective and hopefully get us the best bang for our buck.
Yeah, from the original structure design, we dropped from roughly 400,000 down to a cost of 250,000. I mean, so we've been working on this for a year to be as fiscally responsible as we can.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Supervisor Seat, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Williamson, it's nice to see you. I was interested in the location. Apparently, is out at the fairground location.
At the highway department.
Is that the highway department at that site? Because I know there are outlying sites as well. So, do we not have a shelter facility for salt and sand presently at the highway department?
Correct.
We do not. Okay.
We do not. We have storage for salt.
Secondly, have we had any contact from DNR or any other department of the state that would have an interest in this regarding potential contamination?
I have not brought it to their attention.
Pardon?
I have not brought it to their attention.
They haven't brought it to your attention.
No. And I don't want their attention.
Yes, I understand that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, other committee members.
Mr. Chairman.
Yep, go
can
ahead,
I ask
Supervisor
Roger a
Kuhn?
question?
Yep.
It's Mark. Roger, do they treat you the same as they do the township, where they come and inspect your salt pile?
Yes, we get inspections
To make sure
every year. Yep.
Just to make sure that it's less than 5%, which it always is. That's correct?
Correct.
That's what I thought. So just
Mr.
some other
Chairman?
background. When I was a town chairman, you get inspected every year, and you have to make sure that you're less than 5%, otherwise it needs to be covered. The biggest risk is groundwater contamination, I would think, just because of the rain and snow, whatever it may be. One thing I'm always, and Roger and Steve and them guys can contest this. So whenever we talk budget stuff, I'm always asking Roger how much money he can give back to the county. I get the general fund, pulling money out of the general fund. I'm probably not a great big fan of that either, but I do think that we have to guarantee that we can get this on the next capital borrowing and get it done. It may not have affected us yet, but it's probably just a matter of time until it could. So that's what I got.
Okay, other committee members who haven't spoken up yet?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Supervisor Brewer, go ahead.
we've been kicking this around, I think, for maybe 3 years. When it was on highway commission. So it's not a new plan. It's not a new item. It has been out there, and it's another example of proactive trying to head off a problem before it's there. Not only groundwater contamination, you get some wind erosion, blowing the sand around, blowing the silica around. So when it gets dry, so these are all factors and responsible highway department and county would address.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Supervisor Luck.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding what Mark is saying. So the county sand and salt pile is inspected every year by the DNR or someone else, and it has always passed inspection?
It's a private company that comes in and does the inspection.
On the state's behalf?
On all our facilities, so we have our 3 facilities. They inspect all 3 facilities.
Right.
It's private contracted out. They report to the state.
Okay, that's what I wanted to understand. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, anyone else who hasn't spoken up yet? Okay, so the motion that we've got before us today is to grant $250,000 from the general fund for construction of a salt shed. So that's what's been put into the cover sheet. So, you know, from a lot of the discussion I've heard, you know, it's whether or not the project is, you know, worthy or should be prioritized, but not necessarily from the general fund, you know, for immediate funding. I don't believe we're here today to make decisions on what program based on that previous agenda item we just passed, where the administrator is collecting the ideas, and then we'll have to figure out some sort of a process in March for prioritizing them. But here today, we've got this motion about using the general fund. So I think that's what we need to dispose of right now. And would anyone like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Cooey. There's a second to the motion?
Gentis, I'll second it.
Okay, we have a second by Supervisor Gentis. Any further discussion on the motion?
Yes.
Supervisor Seat.
I'd like to have a clear statement of the motion.
The motion is to grant $250,000 from the general fund for construction of a salt shed.
To be effective when?
Well, that would be immediately. There's no, you know, as soon as the county board approves it. We usually don't put. I've never heard of a date being tied to.
I understand that, Mr. Chairman. I understand that. So if we approve this, that and the county board approves it, construction will begin as soon as possible. Is that right?
Well, they would have the funds set aside, but they would have to do their work to design it and go through all the appropriate process. I'm sure construction wouldn't start right away, but it would be, I'm sure they would be moving along quicker than if we wait to borrow for the money.
So this is for fiscal year, calendar year 21, not 20. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. So we should be real clear that the borrowing has already taken place for the year 2021. So all projects capital projects that are happening with borrowed money, that's already been finalized. What we are now considering is what projects are we going to borrow for in the year 2022? That's what agenda item number 10 was about. So if this motion passes, this would circumvent the process of borrowing for this project. It would be an immediate deduction on the general fund set aside for the highway department to start carrying out this project immediately.
So it would be recorded in accounting as a capital expenditure, but it would deplete the general fund by $250,000.
Why don't we kick that to Mr. Langreck? I always get a little stuck on that way of thinking about capital spending and equating it with borrowing. Let's see what he has to say.
That would be the option, would be of the 2021 budget, undesignated funds from the 2021 budget is how I would take it.
Anything else, Supervisor Seep? We got other folks.
That's fine.
Okay, Supervisor Brewer.
Mr. Chairman, I certainly
go ahead.
of going ahead with this project in some way, but I'm a little nervous about funding from the general fund. Don't know. Everything looks good after these reports, but does anyone else share that concern? Did we just add looks good? Let's take out 250,000 right now.
I share that concern.
I do too.
So do I.
Oh. Can we amend the motion? Motion on the floor, do we not?
Certainly, yeah. Supervisor Brewer, if you want to offer an amendment, go ahead.
Well, rather than take it from general fund to get it to prioritize it as a capital improvement project.
I have a hard time hearing Marty.
I want to prioritize it, get it in the priority, with the high priority for a capital improvement project. And I guess it would be part of the borrowing project package then. I'm looking at bonding this thing rather than just plucking it right out of our general fund.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you right, you're making a motion to amend to prioritize this project in the 2022 capital program. Is that correct?
Yes, would be my amendment, and I apologize to anyone who thinks we're delaying it, because we would be, but I want to see it go ahead. I'm just not ready to do it that way.
Okay, so we got a motion to amend. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion on the amendment.
Mr.
Yeah.
Chair,
Yeah, Supervisor Turk.
I think the nature of the amendment is so far different from the original motion that it may not be appropriate as an amendment. It might be better just to vote down the original resolution and set a different course of action.
Okay, well, we already do have the motion to amend on the floor. Supervisor Seat, you usually correct me when I try to withdraw a motion somehow. Does this belong to the body at this point?
The motion belongs to the body. It would take a motion from someone in the body to have it removed and a majority vote.
Okay, so Supervisor Turk, is that a motion to withdraw the amendment?
Well, we have the amendment before us for discussion. We can vote it up or down. I didn't make the amendment, so I can't withdraw it.
Let's read the
No.
amendment again.
Okay, so the motion is to amend to prioritize this project in the 2022 capital program.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Supervisor Seat.
just a slight nuance on Mr. Turk's comment. Any member of the body can move to ask the body to remove the amendment. The amendment belongs to the body since it's been motioned and seconded. So any member can ask that it be removed. It doesn't mean that the member is removing it, but the body is removing it.
Okay. All right, so it sounds like anyone can make a motion to withdraw an amendment if they so choose. So one comment I have on the amendment is I think it would be a good idea to have the entire board weigh in on prioritizing this project versus other projects. So I guess I think it's premature for this committee to say we think this project should get ahead of all the other projects. I think it'd be best to hear them all out at once and let everyone give their input on those and then make a decision that way as an entire body. That'd be my opinion on the amendment. Any other thoughts?
Mr. Chair, this is
Yeah,
Melissa.
Supervisor Lott.
I was having the same thoughts that we just approved, a method for, the administrator to go through and bring forward all these projects so that we could make an informed decision about prioritizing projects. And it seems like this fits into that category. I agree that it's important and it likely needs to be done, but I think it should be considered as a group and we can make that decision with all the projects before us.
Okay, thank you.
Mr.
Supervisor
Chair.
Cooey?
With that being said, then we should approve it and send it to the full county board to see if they agree with taking it out of the general fund.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions on the amendment?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Supervisor Brewer.
if this goes before the whole county board with the up or down, take it out of general fund, it'll go down. So if you want to see it succeed, then we should do it another way. Opinion.
Okay. Thank you. Any other committee members? Okay, if not, let's go ahead and dispose of let's figure out how we're gonna move forward on the amendment, and I think we'll do a roll call. Someone asked me last time after we did a roll call after the last meeting, since usually Clerk Vlasic has done roll calls, there was a question about how I did the order of it. And so last time I did it by alphabetical order, but then that was during the roll call for the initial part of the meeting. Then for the roll call on one of the decisions we made, then I rotated it like the Counties Association recommends, so that the second alphabetical person goes first. And so this time I'm going to go to the third one, I just want you guys to be clear on how I will record these, since I'm temporarily doing the minutes here. So we're going to.
And Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
The reason for that protocol is to prevent a guy whose name begins with Z always having to make the last vote up or down on a roll call. So this is a fair way to do it.
Okay. Yeah, and exactly. Last time you had to make the call on it, right. So this will rotate that. Okay, so here we have a motion to amend to prioritize this project in the 2022 capital program. So if you're voting aye, you're voting in favor of prioritizing it in the 2022 capital program. If you're voting no, you're voting not to prioritize it in the 2022 capital program at this time. And this is just for this motion. Okay, so Gentis.
Linda, you were muted. We didn't hear your response.
I said, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay.
What's your vote?
Aye, yes.
Okay, thank you. Super Luck. I didn't hear you.
No.
Okay. Myself will be a no vote. Seep. Supervisor Seep, I'm waiting on a vote from you. I haven't heard you yet.
Yes, the motion was to prioritize the process for capitalizing the expenditure. Is that correct?
That's right.
Now, when you say prioritize, does that mean it becomes a priority over other items? Or does it mean you're just including it in the list of prioritized items?
That was my intent, yes.
Which was your intent, Supervisor Brewer? Can you clear that up?
With the other projects, but give it a high priority, but listed with the other projects.
Okay, so his intent was to give it a high priority.
All right, as long as I understand that he doesn't mean that it's the first priority, I will vote yes.
Right.
Okay, Supervisor Turk?
No.
Brewer? Brewer, Supervisor Brewer, I have not heard your vote. Supervisor Brewer, do we have a vote from you? Are you still there?
Mr. Brewer, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Supervisor Seat. Okay, Supervisor Cooey?
Yes.
Okay, and Supervisor Brewer again, are you there? So we have 3 in favor and 3 against. So I'm not hearing from Supervisor Brewer. So what happens, Supervisor Seep, when we have a tie?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I believe that it was, I think it would only be fair to wait for Mr. Brewer to come on. I'm sure it's a communication problem with the network. And since he made the motion, I think it's reasonably certain that he would be voting yes. But I don't think we should rule on a tie. If we declared it a tie, the motion is dead. And
Okay. How about we just move on to agenda item number 12, and then we can wait for Supervisor Brewer to get back on so we can find out what his vote was. Is anyone opposed to that? Okay, let's go ahead and do that then.
Or you're going to hold the polls open.
We'll hold the polls open for Supervisor Brewer, yes. Okay, agenda item number 12, Health and Human Services.
Hello.
Oh, okay. Boy, just in time. Supervisor Brewer,
I'm
what's
on
your
the phone
vote?
now.
Okay.
Well, I am going to vote no on my amendment.
Okay. Okay, so the amendment fails with 4 no votes and 3 yeses. So now we have the motion still before us, and the motion is to grant $250,000 from the general fund for construction of a salt shed. So let's also take a roll call on this. First, Supervisor Luck, you'll go first this time.
No.
Myself, I'll be a no. Supervisor Seep?
I'm sorry. I think it's a worthy project, but I'm concerned about the general fund. I will vote no until we see another alternative. I would certainly support an alternative way of funding this as a capital expense.
Okay. Turk?
No.
Brewer?
No.
Bowie?
Yes.
No.
Okay, so the motion fails. 6 no's and 1 yes. All right, moving on then. Thank you everyone for participating in that discussion. I'm sure we'll look forward to more discussion on the salt shed. I'm sure that item is not over with long term. Agenda item number 12, Health and Human Services Fund transfer from Children's Community Options Program Risk Reserve Fund 40 to Health and Human Services Fund 56. Mr. Langrick.
Mr. Chair, looking today for a request to approve transfer of $199.90 from the Children's Community Options Program, CCOP, Risk Reserve Fund 40 to the Health and Human Services Fund 56 for the purchase of Zoom business account license, and forward the recommendation as it's forwarded onto yourself today. I would defer to Director Thorson to further elaborate on this item.
Thank you. The CCOP Risk Reserve is a fund where those CCOP dollars, if they're unspent, they're allowed to keep 15% of those funds in a risk reserve account, but only up to that 15%. The risk reserve is exceeding that 15%, and the state requires that we spend those dollars or return them to the state. We would like to purchase an additional Zoom business account for the CCOP program to be utilized with that $199. It's required that we obtain approval to transfer any funds out of the risk reserve, and so that's why this is before you.
So looking for a motion to transfer the $199 from Fund 40 to Fund 56.
So moved.
Okay, motion Supervisor Brewer. I will second the motion. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries. Agenda item number 13, Health and Human Services Fund transfer from the Transportation Program Fund 63 to HHS Fund 56 for administration costs. Mr. Langrick.
Mr. Chair, looking today for a recommendation to approve the request to transfer $10,000 from the Transportation Program Fund 63 to Health and Human Services Fund 56 for administration costs. And I would defer to Director Thorson to further elaborate on this item.
So this is something that we do every year. The transportation dollars allows for a certain amount of funds to be utilized for administration costs of the program. We transferred, when we received those funds at the beginning of the year, approximately $7,900. We have roughly $20,000 of those AMSO or agency management support and overhead costs. And so we're asking to transfer $10,000 from that Fund 63 into Fund 56 for covering the administrative costs of the program.
Looking for a motion on this one as well. I'll make the motion to get us going. Is there a second out there?
I'll second it.
Okay, second by Luck. Discussion on this one.
Why? I just have a question, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Supervisor Cui.
Why are we always moving money from one account to the other?
That's
my only question. It's just a question, is all it is. But.
Mr. Chair, may I? It's certainly a reasonable question. The transportation funds are required to be in a separate fund. That's a revolving fund account. When those funds, if there's funds remaining in there, there's state regulations on what we need to do with those. And so they're isolated from our main core budget funds.
Okay, any other comments? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries. Agenda item number 14, Health and Human Services Amendments to Addendum. Mr. Langert.
Don? The square footage on the house, you know?
It's about 28 by 28.
28 by...
Are looking today for, we have a recommendation for Health and Human Services proposes approval of a revision to the Health and Human Services Addendum by adding the underlined text shown below and forwarding the recommendations to yourself. The amendments here are laid out by Director Thorson. I can let her elaborate on the specifics and to summarize the reason for the changes. Director Thorson.
Thank you. This is a request to make an exception for when a candidate may be otherwise qualified and we are not able to recruit a candidate with a social work certification. This would allow us to still hire that position if there are no other restrictions in that position from having that certification. Ideally, we want to hire staff who hold certifications and licensure. So this really is intended for those circumstances when we are unable to recruit, but we can find an otherwise qualified individual who would not be able to obtain that certification or licensure. In those cases, this would allow the director to make that decision whether or not to go forward with hiring. I guess I can't emphasize enough that there's a lot of value in the agency having certified social workers in these bachelor level positions. And so this would be an exception that I would not want to make very often, but there are times where we would have been able to hire a qualified candidate. What this does in terms of wages, there is a process for individuals who are temporarily certified as a social worker, and once they receive that certification, they're allowed to advance to another wage level. If this exception were made, that individual would not get that advancement if they did not seek out and obtain a social work certification.
Okay,
Mr.
so, yeah, go ahead, Supervisor Brewer.
I'd like to ask a question. Are these, Tracy, are these usually that they lack a bachelor's degree or a bachelor's degree to a master's degree? What is the usual circumstance here?
The usual circumstance, these would be people who hold a bachelor's degree because those are part of the qualifications for the positions that would be affected by this. But because of the type of bachelor's degree that they hold, they're not eligible to get that social work certification. So an example would be someone with a teaching degree who has experience providing case management or has all the other qualifications, but would essentially have to go back to college to get enough credits to qualify to get that social work certification.
And in your scenario, then they get the job and then they work toward getting the certification.
Well, in this language, it would right now that's how we operate. Is candidates, if we hire them without that certification, they get 6 months to obtain it. So we're restricted from hiring only individuals who really have the capability to obtain that certification in that time period. Sometimes they're allowed a longer period of time, pardon me, but they're still expected to obtain it. And if they don't, they are no longer eligible to stay employed. So this would allow an exception for those individuals where it would really be too onerous and they're a good candidate that we would want to continue to keep employed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm looking for a
Mr.
motion
Chair,
on
I
this
got a
one.
question.
Or any other discussion?
I have some discussion. with
Go ahead,
Mark.
Supervisor Cooey.
So by doing this, we could hire someone who's not a social worker and they would never have to obtain a social work license.
That would be true. Pardon me. However, they would never move up to that wage level of the social worker either. So we hope that there's a motivation for them to either obtain it. And again, this would only be if the position that they're hired into does not have that type of requirement that they be certified. The most likely scenario would be a case manager position in like our CCS program, where that Medicaid program doesn't require certification in order to be in a case manager position, but it would require a bachelor's degree.
This thing's all charged. Got a green light, so put your phone on the charger.
My question with that, Tracy, just to understand, so we're requiring that individual they have to have a social work license or permit or whatever also, but it's not required by the state or the federal government or whatever?
That's right. There are some positions where our requirements are higher than what the minimum requirements of the program are.
I guess me personally, I would rather see us have our hiring accordingly that is required rather than do this. You know what I mean? So I would rather see them, the positions that don't require it, be broke out so it's not putting this on you to make a decision like this. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. I guess, the reason that I bring this forward is for those exceptions. However, I would be a much stronger advocate for trying to hire individuals who have this certification. They have training that really directs them toward the type of work they're going to do. If we end up hiring somebody who doesn't have this, they don't have that additional training, we get a higher level of professional working for the agency when we hire these. But there are some rare circumstances where we haven't been able to recruit a qualified candidate who we felt would really fit into and be able to do the job.
Okay, any other committee members with questions or comments on this one?
So, Tracy, this is Marty again. So how do you want me to vote on this, yes or no?
I am asking for this. It gives another option, especially in a time when we're really struggling to recruit qualified candidates.
It'll be used sparingly, I assume.
That's how I feel about it, that it really should be used very sparingly, because there is a lot of value placed on having those certified and licensed staff in our agency.
I trust you to use it accordingly. I just hope it doesn't become a problem.
Okay, if there are no other comments, I'm going to go ahead and ask for a vote here. And I should remind folks, I think in this committee, I'm the only one who's ever called for a roll call, but anyone can always call for a roll call. All you got to do is just say it. So just want to make sure that committee members feel welcome to do that. So all those in favor of the motion to...
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, I'd like that roll call.
Okay, so we'll do a roll call on this one. And I'm just going to remind people of what the motion here is to the Health and Human Services addendum, which Ms. Thorson laid out for us. So I will be first in line on this roll call. I will vote aye. Supervisor Seep?
I vote aye at the risk of incurring the wrath of Mr. Cooey.
Okay, so Turk?
Aye.
Brewer?
Aye.
Cooey?
No.
Gentis?
Aye.
Luck?
Aye.
Okay, so the motion carries with 6 yes votes and 1 no vote. Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 15, Health and Human Services creation of a supervisor in Child and Youth Services Unit. Mr. Langren.
Mr. Chair, this is an item that we have talked about previously, and discussion points had led to us ensuring that we kind of had a visual across the organization. Last month, we did approve on an authorization table to accept it as a document for planning purposes. So then now following back up, there is a recommendation here. Health and Human Services Board recommends creating a Child and Youth Services Supervisor position in order to address the supervisory needs in the Child and Youth Services Unit. I would defer to Director Thorson to further expound on this.
Thank you. So as I think this was back in August that I last brought this through the Health and Human Services Board to the Finance Committee. There is a need to have have more than one supervisor in the Child and Youth Services program. And this is because the child protection work that is done there requires that child protection case management staff must screen their decisions with a supervisor. Currently, the manager of that unit does the primary screening, but there is a supervisor and a manager from one other unit who provide backup and are in a rotation to help with that screening after hours. By having a supervisor within the unit, it allows for all of that work to be done within that unit and allows those other 2 management staff to remain with their work and their workload and not do these extra duties. This allows a little more flexibility in the program. So the request is to create a supervisor position within the Child and Youth Services unit and eliminate one of the case management positions. So this is not a request to add staff, but it's a request to change positions. in order to do that, the request is to name the staff that has the highest level of qualifications in that unit to that position, primarily because we would be eliminating one of those positions. And so we would want to fill that with one of the existing staff. And that staff person is Kayla Williams.
So one question I have is, so will Ms. Williams no longer be a case manager? Will she only be supervising case managers? And then are you then one less on your, obviously you'd be one fewer on your case managers.
No, the expectation would be that that supervisor position would carry a caseload and would serve as a backup screener and supervisor for the unit. The state only allows someone in a supervisor position to conduct these screenings. And so this would allow there to be a staff in that unit that can conduct the screenings, but she would carry a caseload in addition to that supervisory responsibility. And
the Wisconsin Department of Children and Families, they require that the word supervisor be in their job title. Is that the issue?
Yes, that is correct. There are counties that have job titles that are called lead workers. And there's been a lot of discussion across the state over time on whether or not lead workers who are not in a supervisory management position could do that screening, and the state has not allowed that.
Okay, yeah, the only thing that caught my eye when I was reviewing this was, obviously we took care of the internal promotion issue. That was the first issue that stopped you from doing this. But then when I looked at the authorization table that we considered at our last meeting, I see there's a manager in this Child and Youth Services Department, and then there are 7 positions below that manager, 6 case managers and 1 youth aid worker. So it does look a little funny when you have one person, I'm assuming, and maybe I've got those numbers wrong, which I want you to correct me on if I do, but it looks funny to have one manager for 7 people and then add in a supervisor. It just, the way it's all worded just seems like there's a lot of management going on, and of course you want everyone, I would think the goal would be to have everyone working as a team, to make sure that these I'm assuming these are foster kids, and so you're wanting, people in a team atmosphere helping each other, because those are as a former foster parent, these are very complex and difficult cases. So, but it's the wording that trips me up, and it doesn't look good, I think, to have 2 people supervising 5 people.
Yes, I agree with what you're saying. It looks like it's heavy on the management side, but because of this distinct role, establishing someone with a supervisor authority really helps the unit function more as a unit and as a team. But yes, it's a small unit, and so we aren't asking for a supervisor because we're having difficulty supervising personnel. We're asking for a supervisor because we have difficulty covering the responsibilities within the workload, because there's after hours and regular hour work involved.
Okay, all right, thank you. That answers my questions. Other committee members?
Mr. Chair, this is.
Let's hear from. Oh, is that Ms. Forehand?
It is. I'm not a committee member, but I am the attorney.
Go ahead.
But I am the attorney that works with that department. And I will tell you that when Ms. Thorson came on, I actually sat down in her office and suggested a kind of a structure like this. I see the inner workings of this department on a daily basis, working with these, with the caseworkers. And I really do think that this would be good for the department, in that so often this is a department where social workers kind of come and learn to get their feet wet. And I think having an experienced worker that they can go to in addition to the manager that they feel comfortable is going to just help the overall workings of that department. So I would say from my working with the department, I do hope that the committee will pass this. I think it would be very beneficial to the department.
Okay, thanks for sharing your thoughts, Ms. Forehand, I appreciate that. Other committee members?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Supervisor Brewer, go ahead.
Child Protective Services is not a 8 o'clock in the morning to 5 at night job. It's 24/24. So if this is necessary to make the thing run, then I'm in favor of it.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, Supervisor Luck.
Just to clarify, so this change in eliminating one position and making it a different position, that is in your 2021 budget, so there is no financial impact of this move?
That's correct. We included it in the budget and planned for the roughly maybe somewhere between $5,000 and $7,000 difference in the salary.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Cooey.
Yeah, I thought when I was looking at some past notes back in 19, we had a manager and 2 supervisors that was covering, it was a different departmental structure. Why did we change that back in 19? And then now we're going somewhat, I mean, basically we're going back to that type of structure.
I think the history of how the structure has changed over the years, at least what I can tell you from the time that I came back to Richland County and prior to that, is there was a structure where the child and family services and the behavioral health services were put under one manager's responsibility, which those are the 2 largest and highest liability program areas that Health and Human Services manages. And so that's just way too much for one person to try to oversee both of those really distinct and sometimes moving in different directions in terms of their program goals. And so I think that was done primarily as thought that would get those 2 units more aligned with one another, as well as probably a budget savings measure. But when I came back to the agency and that was the structure, it was clear to me that it was really much more than what one person was able to do. So in looking at how to reorganize the units, still a fair number of those programs went over to behavioral health, which has 2 supervisors and 1 business analyst to help support the work of that unit. And we made the Child and Youth Services unit that is solely child protection and juvenile justice work. That's a small unit. Partially because at that point in time, we didn't know how we would fund any additional staff to meet the needs of the units. So at that point, I guess roughly last year, the state allocated more funds to child welfare. And at that time, we were able to add another position, another case manager position to the Child and Youth Services, or the Child Welfare, Child Protection Services. And then we were able to look at how we might consider having that supervisory position. And so we built that into our budget for 2021. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it does. I guess it seems like we're restructuring over there all the time, and it concerns me that we have to continue to do this. That's all.
Okay, so I think we'll go ahead and, unless there's any other discussion or comments, we'll go ahead and take a vote on, I'm sorry, I need a motion first and a second on this.
So moved.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Brewer.
A second.
second by Supervisor Luck. All those in favor?
Can we have a roll
and
call
let me-
vote, Mr. Chair?
Absolutely. We'll do a roll call vote, and I should make it clear what the motion is, because I was a little unclear on this at first. So Supervisors Brewer and Luck, if you disagree with this, just make sure to let me know. But the motion here would be to create one Child and Youth Services Supervisor position and eliminate one Child and Youth Services Case Manager position.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
It would seem that part of the motion might need to be appointing the staff person into that new position.
Well, let's see, unless I'm correct, the Finance and Personnel Committee no longer has that authority to do that.
Oh.
We have the authority to create and eliminate positions, but not to name people. That's now an administrative function.
I understand.
Mr. Chair, we took action by committee on that. I don't believe that we've passed it though by resolution to allow for, as we had talked about, the promoting into other positions. So that was done at our second January meeting post county board, so that has not been affirmed in resolution yet.
Okay, so then we would need, so then the motion would need to state that in addition to creating the position and eliminating the position, we'd be appointing Kayla Williams to the Child and Youth Services Supervisor position. So I think I got all that down here. Does that sound okay, Supervisors Brewer and Luck?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we've got a roll call request on this one, and this time we'll start with Supervisor Seep.
Aye.
Turk.
Aye.
Brewer.
Aye.
Cooey.
No.
Gentis.
Aye.
Luck.
Aye.
Okay, and I'm going to vote aye as well. Okay, so there's 6 yes votes and 1 no vote, so that motion carries. Okay, that takes us to agenda item number 16, Health and Human Services, new position description, APS Crisis Professional. Mr. Langreich.
Mr. Chair, looking today for a motion on behalf of the Health and Human Services Board. They're looking to recommend a motion to approve an Adult Protective Services EPS Crisis Professional position description, and then approval of the position description will allow the department to move forward with the hiring process of an APS Crisis Professional in 2021. So approving adding a proposed position description and title to the definition section of the handbook, personnel policies, work rules in the Richland County wage scale, and forward the recommendation to the finance personnel. That's to you folks. I would defer to Director Thorson to further elaborate on this item.
Thank you. So as part of our 2021 budget, we looked at the needs for crisis and adult protective services. That is the place where oftentimes emergency placements occur. We have one staff who does adult protective services and one staff who does primarily crisis intervention work, and then also manages those individuals if they are placed in the institution, and works on discharge plans and getting them back into the community or into a lower level of care. The caseloads are significant, and it makes it very difficult for us to assure that we're managing those individuals safely and moving people back into the community as quickly as we're able. So we put in our budget a position that would be shared between adult protective services and crisis services. The funding for this comes primarily because the state increased our crisis funding beginning in 2020. through through a cost reconciliation process. So this will be the first year that we will be able to take advantage of that funding. So the cost of the position in terms of tax levy is roughly about $15,600 approximately. And the rest of the funding for the position comes from those Medicaid dollars that we get through both billing for crisis services and through the cost reconciliation process.
Okay, so I'm going to kick us off here with a couple of questions. So with that authorization table that we looked at our last meeting, there is under the behavioral health services unit, you have listed one FTE for APS crisis professional. Had we already approved that? Is that an existing position, or was that only basically, sort of tangentially approved through the budget?
No, I believe that's the existing APS staff that we currently have. I guess I better pull it up and just make sure I'm looking at it.
Okay, it's listed as APS/crisis professional, which is at grade H, exempt 40 hours a week, and there's one FTE.
I stand corrected, Mr. Chair. You're right. That was when we were putting that together, that was kind of because that was a plan for 2021. It was added in there. So that has not been approved, and it's certainly not filled at this point in time.
Okay. And that's okay. I mean, that chart was meant to, basically guide a lot of our work, and we knew there were going to be errors in it. So really that should state, at least what's been approved so far, that should be 0, and you're asking for it to become 1.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, when I first heard about this, I was pretty surprised that we had approved a new position in the budget. It makes a little more sense to me now that, there's some outside funding coming with it. But, given that, we had to look at the health budget, and I think you guys had a $100,000 cut over your initial request made to the administrator. I guess
120,000.
Okay, 120. Then I was surprised that we had added staff while at the same time making that cut. We have needs for staff all across the county operation, and we're currently trying to figure out how to deal with administration and the clerk's office and all sorts of stuff. And in general, I guess I've been opposed to adding more staff because of the escalating cost. I'm concerned about not being able to give existing staff raises the more people that we keep adding to our employee base. So other committee members, just looking for your thoughts on this as well.
My question, how much is it? How much are we paying toward it, or how much is coming from other funding?
So the total position cost, pardon me, I'm going to pull that up so I give correct information. The total position cost for that with benefits would be $73,100. The cost, the part that's funded by tax levy is $15,345.
Okay, other committee members?
Well, Mr. Chairman, we're getting a great return for our investment. I fully support this.
Mr. Chair, I thought.
Yes, Supervisor Cooey. Yep.
I thought last month we had a hard time defining where the tax levy really played out. You know what I mean? I mean, we have a number of 15,000, but what guarantees that we get the rest of that money from the state or whoever? Is there requirements that they have to do X amount of work, or is there billable hours? Are billable hours a factor in this?
Well, definitely billable hours are a factor. The way that funding works for Medicaid programs for crisis is that staff do have to bill for the services that they're providing. And then at the end of the year, we report our true costs for those positions. So if the billable hours, the payments that we receive do not cover the true costs of having that position, then we go through a reconciliation process in which we obtain reimbursement from the state. So that is, as long as we are good about tracking and reporting all of the costs associated with the position, we are able to recoup our costs.
So that 15,000 could increase if we're not diligent in our work.
Yes, that's certainly fair to say. If we are not capturing all of those costs, then we don't maximize our funding.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Other committee members?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I guess the rationale for requesting a position like this it's especially highlighted in a year of extremely high placement costs for the agency. One of the things that we're trying to do to try to address that is to assure that we have adequate staff who are adequately trained to address these crisis situations, find solutions for them so that they don't rise to the level of going into a high cost institutional placement. Or when those institutional placements occur, it's having the staffing necessary to be working on that discharge planning so that as soon as it's safe for that individual to be moved back into a less restrictive setting or back into the community, that we're able to do that. Right now, we don't have the staff capacity to address that when we have significant institutional or significant safety concerns for individuals in our community. So the plan for trying to address that, this is just one of the many things that we're trying to do to reduce that liability or that potential risk of institutionalization of individuals. We can't guarantee exactly dollar for dollar return or that this will prevent X number of situations, but without having adequate staff and services in the community, there's no place for those individuals to go when they are in the institution.
Okay, I mean, yeah, for me personally, I'm just looking through all the different positions you have in the behavioral health services unit, and there are quite a few people in there already. I feel like I just need to learn more before I can support adding more staff. That's just a hard thing for me, even when there's a good match on it, and I like that there's the match, but I'm just concerned about our staff numbers growing too far out of control. That's for why at the moment I'm going to vote no on this, but the committee might disagree. So, any other comments from committee members? Yep, Supervisor. Let's see if anyone who hasn't spoken yet wants to speak.
I would have one. So Tracy, I realize you can't guarantee this, and I think that's what you were trying to say, but essentially this position has the potential to be able to save us dollars on our placement costs. That's because they'll be able to work very closely to get people out of the very expensive placements into other situations that are less costly. That's essentially what you're saying.
That's correct. I believe that's true. I think we're at greater risk if we don't have adequate staffing in the community. And although I know it looks like our behavioral health staff is quite large, we fund a lot of services for individuals in the community to keep them in the community. There's the program called CCS, which is a Medicaid program. That's a program where we do get 100% funding for those services and those staff. So there's not tax levy involved in that, but that also gives those individuals a place to go when they return to the community, because that program is like a wraparound program that plugs in a lot of different services to help those individuals stay as independent as they're able to in the community.
One more question. So Tracy, how much does it cost to have someone in whatever the state mental facilities are? What does it cost per day?
I think right now the cost ranges between $1,100 a day to $1,300 a day, and that's partially dependent upon if they need more intensive supervision while they're in the facility. So that exceeds over 30,000 a month. I think it gets close to 35,000 a month if the person is in for 30 days.
So in theory, this position, if they were to have someone get out even a few days early, that would easily start to cover the 15,000 that is going towards our tax levy, correct?
That's fair to say.
Okay, anyone else who hasn't spoken up yet? I know we got Supervisor Seat too, who's interested. Okay, Supervisor Seat, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I never get a chance to speak. Mr. Chairman, I fully support this. I served on the Human Services Board for 6 years, and I know the horrific costs that can occur from placements in institutions, and the investment we make in staff to obviate that, to preclude it, to mitigate it, has always been a highly important issue. And this is an area where we certainly need a staff adequate to help prevent those high cost placements, which are a tremendous burden for the county. Anything that we can do to help with that, we should do. And I fully support this. I have the greatest confidence in our director.
Okay, I have not gotten a motion yet. I haven't asked for it either. So looking for a motion to create the APS crisis professional position.
I would make that motion.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Seat.
This is Dave. I'll second.
Second by Supervisor Turk. Any further discussion on this one? So this time we'll start with Turk.
Aye.
Brewer. Is Supervisor Brewer on the line?
Looking at the time, he may have had to go. It's after 3.
Okay, Cooey. Supervisor Cooey? We haven't been able to hear you yet. Gentis?
Aye.
No.
Wait.
Okay, that's okay. I got no from Supervisor Cooey, aye from Supervisor Gentis. Luck?
Aye.
I vote no. Seep?
Aye.
Okay, and let me just double check to make sure I don't see Richland County, also known as Marty Brewer. Okay, I don't see him. So we have 4 yeses and 2 nos, so the motion carries. So thank you, Ms. Thorson. I think that's everything for HHS today. That was quite a list.
I don't even know.
Pardon
Is
me,
school running?
What was that, Supervisor Gentis?
Is school running and the buses are running?
I think so. Yeah,
Okay.
Ms. Thorson.
I don't know.
Mr. Chair, can I ask?
Yeah, Supervisor Luck, go ahead.
Ms. Thorson, is it something we can kind of track as far as like keeping track of how well we do in getting people out of, how many days and how, I mean, is there any way to track the success of having adequate staff in there?
Yes. In fact, we have begun doing that. We've been establishing a baseline just to look at what our current status is, and we will be tracking days of stay and looking at what resources we're utilizing to move people back into the community or back into less restrictive settings. So yes, we are tracking that.
And one other quick question. I'm assuming you've probably already done this, but is there any potential that the people that's in the behavioral services unit could be assisting with this process? You know, I'm assuming you've looked to see if there's any other place where instead of creating a new position, you could have simply added the duties to someone else?
Yes, I would argue, you know, the way that oftentimes when crisis occurs and a person ends up in a institutional setting or in a hospital, we deal with the initial process of identifying what their needs are and moving them out back into services that they may need. So crisis services is a way of manage that short-term need and then moving people into their longer-term services. And the way that we provide that is through outpatient treatment services and then more intensive, more wraparound case management services like that CCS program. And so I would argue that we actually need to grow the CCS program, which is 100% funded by Medicaid dollars, in order to have enough capacity to move those people into a longer-term support system that can help prevent the need for additional hospitalizations. So yes, we did look at how our existing staff might be able to help with that. However, we are still not meeting, we still have a waiting list to get everybody into the CCS program that we need to be able to serve there. So there isn't additional staff. In fact, I would say we have a staffing shortage in behavioral health if we're going to meet the needs in the community.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Oh yeah, go ahead, Ms. Thorson.
Well, I don't know if it's appropriate for me to bring this up, but as part of that CCS program, the Health and Human Services Board, as part of our budget that we passed, we have 5 staff who are in leased positions, and the board took up an issue.
Yeah, if you don't mind if I jump in, that issue is not on our agenda today. And I've asked Mr. Langreich to work with you to make some changes to get that ready for us.
Sure. I guess there's no. I understand. I'll let it go. I think that the Health and Human Services Board hasn't moved the issue on. They're just looking for some guidance from the Finance Committee, and maybe that's what we have to get in front of you.
I think so. Yeah. No, I've seen the item from the HHS board, and I think it just needs a little bit more clarification before it gets at this committee. There were too many issues mixed in there, and yeah, let's hold off on that one. The other thing with agenda item number 14, I apologize to the committee. I forgot to get a motion. This was for amendments to the addendum for HHS, motion in a second. So I'll make the motion. I just need someone to be okay with seconding that. So if I can get a volunteer.
I'll second it.
Okay. Thank you, Supervisor Luck. Okay, agenda item number 17, seasonal patrolman for Highway Department, Mr. Langreich.
Mr. Chair, looking today for a motion to recommend updates to the county pay plan to include seasonal patrolmen and to amend the highway addendum seasonal hiring section to include the language, the highway commissioner may recruit and maintain a pool of seasonal patrolmen to augment regular full-time patrolmen and seasonal operations. Seasonal patrolmen will be paid at the same grade as highway equipment operator patrolmen, currently at grade G, and the commissioner may recruit and offer up to step 3 in the pay grade for seasonal patrolmen. The highway commissioner will be responsible for ensuring the seasonal patrolmen do not surpass our thresholds that would entitle them to county benefit packages. And that being said, if I've got Commissioner Petrick still on, I would defer to Roger to further elaborate on this item.
Yeah, so this would help, especially like on the weekends, if I could get a pool of part-time patrolmen. We're really short-staffed the way it is. So some guys want to take off during the weekend, and I can get somebody to come in and plow for about roughly, what did we come up with, Clint? About $11 an hour cheaper? Yep, $11.66. And not only that, I mean, if we've been pretty lucky on the COVID side so far that we didn't need, we haven't been short-staffed, but if that happens, we're going to be short on staff, and it just takes additional hours for the guys that do come in to cover routes to get it done.
One question I have for Mr. Petrick. So could the seasonal patrolmen be used for anything but overtime, or will they only be used for overtime?
The goal is for only overtime or short staffing and COVID related incidents. I mean, it's basically more for emergency purposes. It's not for summertime for filling potholes or driving truck just to haul gravel. It's more so for emergency purposes or weekends, short staffed, or wherever I can utilize somebody at a cheaper rate instead of paying somebody overtime.
Okay, my only reason for the question is I just, all of a sudden we have more staff, more full-time staff. If it's only intended to help with the overtime issue, or as you say, emergencies, if you're short-staffed, that makes sense financially. But if we start adding more staff, that's where I had the question. So I think you answered my question. Other committee members?
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Seat, go ahead.
I gather that suppose we had a major disaster like a flood, this would allow Roger to utilize people for overtime, for part-time work. Is that correct?
That would be one of those emergency purposes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other committee members? If not, looking for a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Cooey.
I'll second.
Second by Supervisor Luck. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Agenda item number 18, child support restructuring and reclassification of the lead case worker. Mr. Langreich.
Mr. Chair, looking today for a two-part motion. First one is a restructure of the child support office to reflect changes in staffing level from a 3.2 to a 2.2. And then the second part of this is approval of recommended reclassification for the lead class worker grade H position to child support director grade K, effective March 1st, 2021 at step 4, and to change the employee handbook and authorization table. The background on this item is through the 2021 budget process, the county has adopted a budget that includes planned changes to the child support office. These changes included not funding one full-time equivalent clerical assistant 2 position. There's additional financial duties placed on the child support worker. We had reclassification of the lead caseworker to the title of supervisor with added department head functions. And then we had a title change of assistant corporation counsel, child support administrator to child support staff attorney. We sent this package off to Patrick Glenn Carlson Detman, and then it was sent back with a proposal that the lead caseworker job description that we had proposed is better suited as a child support director position and placed at a grade K based on assessment of the position and the duties that were going to be assigned to it. For the changes from 3.2 to 2.2 position, questions and concerns arose regarding the department's ability to continue in keeping a worker classified as dedicated versus mixed, and notification through regional leadership affirmed that we'll be able to keep one of the positions classified as dedicated, which supports higher reimbursement rates from the state. The position of our lead worker, currently held by Amy Hoffman. Amy Hoffman is currently serves as the lead caseworker, and she has been serving in the department since 2015 and in the position of lead since 2018. The overall financial impact for this change of a lead to director comes to the extent of $5.28 per hour, or a package of $10,000, $10,982.40. Through the 2021 budget process, the clerical assistant 2 position was unfunded for 2021. Knowing that the restructuring effort was needed in the lead position, guidance was given for a $30,000 reduction. The department has roughly about $11,165.53 in wages and benefits space with consideration after this reduction. And that again was kind of taken in consideration with knowing that there was going to be changes in the leadership positions. The overall function changes then for our hierarchy table is we would be changing from a structure that looks like this in 2020 to a structure that would look like this then for 2021. And then also included in there was the letter from Carlson Detman and then the changes in position description. Mr. Chair.
Okay, so for a motion to make these changes to the child support unit.
This is Gentis, I so move.
Motion by Supervisor Gentis.
This is Dave. I'll second.
Second by Turk. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Is anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries. Agenda item number 19, Administrator Transition Committee Transition Plan and Recommendations. Mr. Langrek.
Mr. Chair, just a second. I got to step off. I got a work thing I got to do. So.
Okay, thanks for letting me know.
Mr. Cooley.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. See ya.
Okay, so we've still got 5 members, so we still have a quorum, so we can continue our business. So go ahead, Mr. Langrek.
Mr. Chair, item number 19, looking today for several different motions in regards to recommendations from the Administrator Transition Committee. First one today is a motion to recommend amend of the ordinance 2026 by striking section 3B, which we'll take a look at. The second part is motion to recommend a resolution, the transition plan and directives with removal of sections regarding the functions found in pages 6 through 11. The county administrator will work the plan with these changes, which has been done. The second is to include resolution language to affirm that there is no current changes in the accounts payable position, with expectations that all functions stay in place and that the position remains as direct report to the county clerk, and that the committee intends further review. The background on this item is the Administrator Transition Committee met on Wednesday, 27th. The committee engaged in discussion regarding these transitions. There was action to change the ordinance 2026, which impacts the financial language. Currently, there was 2 parts kind of remaining in this ordinance language that encompasses additional duties placed on the county clerk. One was in regards to financials and one was in regards to budget. Motion was made that the ordinance is adjusted so that there's striking of the budget and kind of the daily monitoring of financial responsibilities, but that the insurance stays in place. The second part of this that was addressed then in a meeting last night included language and changes in a plan that kind of adds more structure to the change. The different elements that the Administrative Transition Committee wants to bring forward includes an outcome statement of what the expectations are, the intentions of the board on how the transition will be completed, the initiatives of the committee and board action, which kind of is the roadmap on how decisions like this are being made through the different committees. The next section that was approved includes the office space assignment. A resolution has went through the county board assigning the computer room area. The further planning here then would dedicate the county clerk's floor space to be kind of co-used by both departments. The next section of it is kind of the establishment of employees, which at this point would only include a section on recruiting the accounting supervisor position, which was also authorized at the last county board meeting. The directives that go forth are also, is another important section here that kind of lays out the expectations for the administrator and the county clerk on bits and pieces moving together to ensure that we have continuity during the transition. And then the last two sections here include the resources that were referenced and granting authority to the committee and county board to make these recommendations and changes. And then finally, the plan for oversight and communication throughout the project. And I would defer then to Supervisor Luck, who would be able to potentially expound more upon these actions coming from our committee.
So I have a lot to add. I think that this document speaks for itself. What we're looking for, what we wanted, our intention was to have a document that clearly lays out who all the players are and really just making it clear that as a board, we are expecting that the employees and elected officials will work together to make this transition happen. Indicating that there will be shared office space, that, the staff is not going to move. The HR and accounting supervisor will stay in that office and continue to work with the clerk and the county administrator. So I guess unless people have specific questions, I'm happy to go into more detail about the discussions that we've been having, but the part that he mentioned that we left out is the part that deals with the accounts payable specialist position. And we just felt that we have a lot more information to gather and discussion to be had before we can make any further recommendation on that position. So we want that position to continue to do the job as described currently. Still reporting to the clerks, but we'll still do the financial duties that are associated in that job description of that position. So if anyone has any specific questions, I'm happy to answer them as well.
One of the things that jumped out to me in reviewing the report this morning was that the Finance and Personnel Committee has some oversight role here. So I think this plan, kind of gives us some of that authority. Although I know that the administration transition committee, is really more effectively doing that right now. But I just wanted to point that out just so that we know that the plan kind of lays out some of that oversight for finance and personnel. The other thing is, I was thinking maybe we should just get a motion on the table here and then we can see if there's any further discussion. But going back up to the very top of the cover sheet, Mr. Langreich, if you could pull that up so we can all look at the motions there. I've got something written out that's just a little bit different here, and so just want to run this by everyone and see if this will work. So the first part I have would be the same. It would say a motion to amend ordinance 20-26 by striking section 3B. And then the second part of the motion would be more that middle paragraph. And instead of having it this lengthy way of saying removing some pages and such, just to say approve the transition plan as presented, because we haven't seen the more complicated one. The one we're looking at today is the one that Mr. Langreich has already cleaned up. So that it's a two-part motion. The third part, nothing's really coming to us. We're not doing anything different. So I just left that off. So just wanted to get people's feedback and see if they're okay with that being the motion that comes out of our committee today.
I have one question on the ordinance. I'm not sure if we want to say striking that entire section, because actually it looks like he reworded it to say that the clerk, instead of the clerk, the county administrator is taking on that function. Our intention was to remove the financial functions from the administrative coordinator resolution that is still in effect. But to leave the insurance, and the discussion we had is that our county administrator, we've already placed the HR and finance burden on his office, and we're attempting to provide him with enough staff, but we did not want to place the insurance burden on his office at this point until we can get this transfer of the HR and finance well on its way. So that was why we, instead of striking the entire ordinance, we left the language in there for the insurance program.
Well, as it's written, the motion would be to amend ordinance 2026 by striking section 3B. Not by striking the whole ordinance or repealing the whole ordinance.
Right. So I guess my question is for Administrator Langrick. There you have, instead of it being struck, you have just changing the language to assisting the county administrator in the preparation of the annual budget. So are you wanting to leave that section in there, or are we removing that entire sentence that says assist the county administrator in the preparation of the annual budget, monitor implementation of the adopted budget to ensure all expenditures, yada, yada?
The highlighted area is recommended to be struck.
Okay.
Corrections on there are showing actions from the last ordinance to amend. That's correct.
Okay, perfect. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to amend ordinance 2026 by striking section 3B and approving the transition plan as presented.
Can I ask a question first, or?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay.
We can do it either way.
I know I should know the
first,
names of everything, but I know the HR. The position that Derek had, are we going to fill that position, and who's going to be doing that?
So that position has been posted, and we are taking applications and that position has been moved to the county administrator's office. And he's actively working through the process of filling it.
Okay, thank you.
And I believe there is a section in the transition plan that lays out the goal dates for that, Supervisor Gentis. There's several steps.
I read it, but I didn't see that,
Something like February 10th posting and
yeah,
something like that.
I would make that motion.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Luck.
This is Dave. I'll second.
Okay, second by Turk. Any further discussion or questions?
The position that you feel is being advertised for, that's my question?
The position that is vacant right now, Administrator Langreck is going to be advertising for that position, estimated February 10th.
So
actually, I think it's already being advertised.
It is currently posted. Supervisor Seep, if you do apply and you're awarded the position, though, you'd have to give up your county seat.
Thank you very kindly, but I have a little trouble with my vision.
Yep, go ahead, Supervisor Luck. Yep.
I just want to make sure, and the motion also is including the language that the accounts payable specialist position would continue with the current job description, current supervisor, and but basically that language is included in this motion, correct? I believe it's in the plan.
Yeah, I can copy all that into the minute if you want. Is that necessary for finance and personnel to say that nothing's changing?
Well,
and you guys are still looking at it?
Right. We felt it was important just to be clear that our intent is that that position continues to do her duties as she has always done them. So I want to make sure that she is very clearly able to continue to enter her financial duties, the records that she takes care of for our financial, that she just continues to do what her job description says under the supervision of the clerk.
Okay, got it. Well then, and I'm assuming Supervisor Turk's going to agree with you on adding that in.
That is correct.
Okay. Okay, so I got that added in the minutes. So the additional language would just say, and affirm there is no current change in the accounts payable position with expectations that all functions stay in place and that the position remains as a direct report to the county clerk, and the committee intends to further review.
Yes,
so it's correct. Okay, it's a three-part motion. Any other comments?
Part of that is whether we need more employees in there or not. That's the part of the review, right?
Yeah, Supervisor Turk, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, this is not the final answer to what things are going to look like, but we got to take it in steps, and we need to get things squared away and get that vacant position filled. And then it's been made very clear to us we need to spend some time understanding all the work that goes on, and there's a lot of it before we start determining percentages and more or less positions or whatever. But we need to get things squared away with the existing staff and ensure that everybody's working together to make sure the work gets done for the citizens of Richland County.
Great. thanks for all the work you guys are doing. I know it's a lot of work. You guys are doing a lot, I know. So, okay. All those in favor of the 3-part motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Mr.
Oh, Supervisor Cootie? Yeah, go ahead.
I just made it back. That's all I was letting you know. I'm for it.
Okay, good. All right. So that motion carries. And then agenda item number 21, future agenda items. Does anyone want to volunteer? Got any
Mr. Chair?
ideas? Yeah, go ahead.
I think we should have a discussion as to whether this committee should meet regularly twice a month. We seem to get into these marathon meetings and we lose members along the way, so perhaps we should just establish a regular twice a month schedule.
Okay. We can put that on the agenda, or we can let maybe Mr. Langrek, I've sort of punted that idea to him before too, and he was on the fence. So that's part of it, is maybe getting him to, I think it's good to hear. I don't necessarily disagree, so any other ones?
I was going to say I work for you, Mr. Chair, so if that's
Okay.
that's the direction we go, then direction we go.
Well, we all work for each other, you know. I mean, sometimes you request an extra meeting, sometimes we request one, so you know.
Mr. Chair.
Okay. Anyone else with future agenda items?
Mr. Chair, this is Mark.
Yeah.
I would like to entertain the idea of looking at these department heads and supervisors in all areas as being a salaried position versus an hourly position. I think some are and some aren't, but I think we should look at that. In my opinion, I think we pay a lot of on-call stuff, and there's an awful lot of money there that maybe we could, of course, you'd have to look at how many hours they work and how much on-call and all that stuff and make the salary appropriate. But in my experience, managers and supervisors are typically in a salaried position. So just something to think about.
Okay, so making higher level positions salaried versus hourly, or maybe evaluating.
At least evaluating.
Okay, evaluating higher level positions as salaried versus hourly. Okay, got it. Anyone else?
Oh, I think that my discussion of the mask recommendations, we're hoping that Rose or Health and Human Services are going to do that, right?
Yes. So yeah, you had made that request about getting that on this agenda. I haven't heard a response back on that, so that's still kind of floating out there.
Okay.
The mask recommendation thing. Linda had done that offline just for everyone's information. So.
I think we plan on meeting on that item on Friday, Mr. Chair.
Okay, great. Anyone else? Anyone else? Future agenda items? Okay, hearing no one else. Well, I'm not quite sure how to request this next motion, but the way I had written it out was a motion to adjourn to Tuesday, March 2nd at 1 p.m. I don't know if anyone wants to make that motion, or if you want to amend it to have a different date based on Supervisor Turk's comment. We could always try to do 2 meetings in March, because I think we got everything done for February that I'm aware of, but.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead.
You already have the discussion of an agenda item plan to discuss changing the meetings to twice a month or whatever. So I think we have to meet according to what we have been doing until we decided a meeting to change our meeting schedule, right?
Yeah, and typically when we adjourn at the end of a meeting, it's so that it's on everyone's calendar and we have an expectation of when our next meeting will be. However, if I get a recommendation from staff that we meet again,
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll take that and I'll schedule an additional meeting based on what I know the needs of staff might be. Although there was at least one time where I got a request and I said, no, I think it can wait, so I think it's usually best to have an idea ahead of time, but it still allows the option to schedule an additional meeting in the meantime. So it's sort of fuzzy is what I'm trying to say. But I guess, so I'm looking for a motion to adjourn to Tuesday, March 2nd at 1 p.m. virtually.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, so we got a motion by Supervisor Cooey. Who's the second?
I will second.
Okay, second by Seep. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay.
Mark, I have a
Thanks,
question.
Mr. Seep.
Thank you, everyone.
Mark, are you there?
Yeah.
Were you at the basketball game last night?
No, I wasn't.
Okay.
He was at the Phoenix.
I wish, Mr. Seep.